Hello, this is Emmanuel with the Grab Some Popcorn podcast, and I'm here today to do a review of the Mad Men Season 2, which I just finished yesterday. So, here we go, just a quick recap. I watched the second season of Mad Men on HBO Max. The first season introduced me to Don, who was a high-ranking official in an advertising company who was using an assumed name and identity. It also introduced me to Peggy, who had a sexual encounter with an account manager in the company and ended up getting pregnant in the first season. These were two of the big stories that I was excited to follow into the second season. The smoking and drinking in the office continued. The constant sexual encounters at the office continued, with every new secretary getting hit on and eventually ended up banging someone at the office. I came in hoping to learn more about Dawn's identity and what happens to Peggy's baby. We get introduced to Duck, who's a higher level official in the advertising company who begins working there after Roger had several heart attacks. Most of the other characters remain the same in the second season, who I met in the first season. So some ongoing themes that I've seen were the alcohol and tobacco use remain the same. We saw lots of sexual scandal with secretaries and middle management in the company constantly getting into sexual scenarios and situations. Those were things I saw that never changed. This time, Don's character gets caught cheating, and so we get to see an entire scenario between him and Betty, his wife, where we're not sure if they're going to be together or are they going to get a divorce this season. Peter and his wife also have some marriage issues because she wants to adopt a baby and he doesn't want to have a kid that's not his, and this makes one of the main themes heavy drama and family issues in the second season. Some characters that I focused on. So the main character for me this season were, well, first off, Don, the main character. We follow along all his smoking, drinking, sexual scandal. In this season, he cheats on his wife with another man's wife who's a comedian. It turns out that the comedian tells Don's wife that he cheated, and he ends up going into an underground casino, and the comedian's name is Jimmy. Jimmy's there, and he ends up punching out Jimmy. Another character that I followed this season was Peter, one of the head account managers at the advertising firm. He's having trouble having a baby with his wife, and so she wants to resort to adoption, and Peter doesn't. So Peter's wife's dad calls Peter, his stepdad, and tries to convince him to adopt. And when Peter stands firm, he takes away one of the accounts that he gave to Peter, which caused some drama. So he actually took it to a whole new level and started messing with Peter's job. Of course, I follow Peggy, who gets to be a full-on copywriter with the advertising firm and even gets her own office this season. And we also see Peggy start talking to a priest in her church, and we can obviously see that the priest wants to get to know her, but she's disinterested in him sexually, but of course she's polite because he's a priest in her church. So here's some best scenes or important moments that I came across in season 2. In the first episode, it looks like Peggy's acting like she didn't have a baby, so they're making us watch more before we find out what happens. The second episode, Peter Campbell's dad dies on a plane, and then they have to go and try to win over the account. So, American Airlines, I think it was, the plane crashed. Peter's dad dies on that plane, and then they have him try to manage that account. And also, we finally see Peggy's baby there in the second episode. So later on, Don ends up cheating again, but this time it was the woman that came on to him, and it seems to be an ongoing theme during the times. Something in every episode, there's some sort of scandal like that happening. In episode 7, we find out that a celebrity comedian knew that Don slept with his wife and starts hitting on Don's wife, and it was interesting to see where it went from there. Episode 8, Don's wife finally accuses him of cheating because the comedian Jimmy apparently told on him. Episode 9, one of the copywriters was so drunk that he pissed his pants right before a client meeting, and there was a huge drama, and they basically severed him with 6 months of salary. This episode, Don also punches out Jimmy for telling his wife that he cheated, and now Peggy has the copywriter's office, but we still don't know whose baby it is. Episode 10, Don's wife's dad suffered a stroke in this episode. Looks like everyone is in bad health because of how much smoking and drinking is going on. Episode 12 looks like Don ran away from his job and the business meeting in California. According to this episode, looks like he's starting a new life. Also, Peter doesn't want to have an adopted baby and loses a huge account over the argument. In the last episode, Peggy finally tells Peter that she has a baby and gave it away. So we find out that Peter's the dad. Peter finally realizes that he can have a baby, but they literally saved that whole storyline for 1 minute in the last episode of the second season. Don comes back to the office to find out that they're merging with another company from the UK, so we're not sure what's going to happen to Don and his job. They left a ton of questions unanswered and uncertainty, which makes it so you have to watch the third season. And I'm not sure I'm going to watch it, though. It's a good show, it's well done, but I think I figured out the mood and tone. And for me, I might move on to something with a little bit more action or comedy. This show has plateaued, and it has a slightly dark undertone, which makes me question being able to watch another 4 or 5 seasons straight. A bit too much cheating, scandal, and overall it's a good show, but I would definitely try to see what else is on before moving on to the next season. I'd still watch it, though, if nothing else is on. Anyway, some predictions for the third season. I know that some people have already seen the show and the seasons, but I'm just coming across it now. My prediction is that they're going to complete the merger and try to hang on to Don because he's just so good at his job. The thing is that Duck made a move to be president of Sterling Cooper, and I'm sure Don would rather change jobs than work under Duck. I predict that they'll make Duck in charge of business and still have him be the president, while they might make Don the head of creative and I guess be like a VP or other senior official. Another prediction of mine is that maybe Peter, now that he knows he had a baby with Peggy, this might cause something to go wrong in his current marriage, and him and Peggy might get together since they have a baby. Finally, I think Don and Betty will get back together because Betty's having another kid and it's Don's. So final takeaway, I enjoyed the second season. I think it's a good show that's done very well. It's definitely the best thing to watch if there's nothing else. I think there's like 7 or 8 seasons of the show, and I've grown to like most of the characters there. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue watching it clean through each and every episode of each season. I think it's one of the shows that I might take a break from and then come back to once there's nothing else left to watch. I enjoyed these types of things, but there's just so much scandal, smoking, drinking, and tons of drama. This isn't my first choice of genres. Action and comedy are my first choice of genres, so I'm probably going to take a break from the show for a little while and then come back to the third season a little bit later. And that was my take on Mad Men Season 2, which can be found on HBO Max. So that's pretty much all I had. Thanks for listening, and I'll see y'all in the next one. This is Emmanuel with the Grab Some Popcorn podcast. Over and out.